This is the 2022 Ford Edge ST, and this is going to be an Edge ST specific video. You're going to learn everything you need to know about this vehicle, what's going on underneath the hood, second row spacing, first row spacing, all the bells and whistles and highlights that you need to know about this thing. Now, if you're looking for something on the Edge Titanium, one of the other models, or if you want to just figure out how the technology inside of the Edge works, check down below because I've put together crazy, comprehensive videos on how all of these things work. I do also want to say thank you so much for helping the channel grow the way that it has. I love the fact that you guys are enjoying the content, the way that I do it. I know it's long, there's lots of stuff that I cover off, all the bells and whistles. But channel has grown like crazy since I started it up in April of 2020. So, once the channel hits 10,000 subscribers, going to be giving away a free set of WeatherTech floor liners, a dash cam, as well as just a general car cleaning kit. So there's 3 different giveaways that are going away. Just make sure that you subscribe to the channel in order to be eligible. A couple things about this specific one. It's the 400A package. So the Edge ST has 2 different packages. It's the 400 versus the 401. We're looking at the 400, which means that we don't have the front-facing camera. It's not a full 360 camera like what we'd find in the Lincoln equivalent, the Nautilus, but it is a front 180 degree. So we can at least see what's going on in front of us. And as always, we do have our backup camera there regardless. Now, one thing I love about the Edge ST is just the meaner looking body style from what you're gonna see in the regular Edge lineup, with the exception of the Edge ST line. Because we've got the ST line, which is essentially this thing's baby brother. And the reason why is because it doesn't have quite the same guts as the regular ST is. So the ST, we'll get under the hood in a second, has a 2.7 liter turbo engine, but tire-wise inside of this thing, we are looking at a 20-inch tire standard with an optional 21. Down in the States, you've got an additional brake performance package, which is going to give you more aggressive brakes. We unfortunately don't have that option up in Canada. Now, it doesn't matter if you're in Canada or the States, this thing is strictly going to be available all-wheel drive, and that's the same way across the entire Edge lineup. In the 22 model, Ford decided to get rid of the front-wheel drive option, but we couldn't get that in the Edge ST anyway, so here nor there. But looking at the front end, we do have our LED headlamps there. We've got our LED fogs. Now, this specific one, because it's the 400, also did not have the forward sensing system. This specific one doesn't have the front-facing camera, but we do have that meaner-looking grille with the ST badge just right on the bottom right-hand side of the grille. So looks really sharp. And that kind of honeycomb black painted look carries down into the lower part of the bumper. Nice plastic piece along the bottom, great as always. Nice silver highlights which carry through the front end, the back end of the vehicle, and then all throughout the interior, which is always a nice thing. Along the door itself, we do have our blind spot monitoring system, so we can just make it out. We do have a 5-digit number here, so we could lock the door by pressing these 2 buttons. Because we've got intelligent access, so if we had our key fob and we tossed it into our pocket, so no fob, all we have to do is slide our hand in order to unlock, and then we can press here in order to lock. So a lot of different options there, but hopping inside, absolutely beautiful look. We do have some micro white stitching along the door, and that follows through the driver passenger seat, as well as the back seats, which we'll get to in a second. But that highlight, also be able to find it throughout the steering wheel. So we can just kind of see it all throughout the wheel there, which is a nice thing. Now along the door itself, so we saw those silver highlights in the front of the vehicle. We do have it right along the door. We've got some base seat memory buttons, our Bang & Olufsen sound system, because this thing does have a 12-speaker system, which sounds absolutely amazing. We can control our side view mirrors, basic window control up and down, and then we've got a little bit of storage space along both the driver and the passenger seat. Now, because this is the ST, we do have our Ford Performance badge right along the scuff plate there. Taking a peek on the inside, we do have a series of different options to control what's going on with our lights. So we can turn our fog lamps on, off. We can adjust what's going on with our running lamps. I always just recommend keeping it in the auto position. Increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen. We can open and close the tailgate from the inside. And we can also turn our stability control on or off. We do have a little button there, so we could, well, button I should say, it's a little latch, so we can literally use this in order to be able to adjust our steering wheel. And then we've got some unique pedals there, so nice silver pedals. Because we're in the Edge ST, we do also have our power adjust for the seats. So forwards, backwards, up and down. We've got our lumbar support on top of that. Along the side, we do also have a release for our hood. So all we're gonna have to do is pull that. Now let's go for a little bit of a walk. So, right in the front end of the vehicle, if we look just right above the Ford badge, so we're going to lift up, and we've got a little release, you might just be able to see it over there. So what we're going to do is lift that out to the left, and it's on hydraulics. Oh, I feel like I'm using the force here. All right, so few things to point out. As I mentioned, the Edge ST only has one available engine choice, and that's the 2.7 liter engine. And here's where we look at the Edge ST versus the ST line. The Edge ST has a crazy amount of power, like it's 335 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque, which is like, it's amazing. It's amazing what power this thing can push out. But if you don't care about the added power, you could look at just the Edge ST line, which was introduced last year. But what that's going to do is give you the same aggressiveness, a lot of the same feature sets as the Edge ST. It's just going to have the regular 2-liter EcoBoost engine instead, like what we're going to find in pretty much the majority of the Edge lineup instead. But taking a peek at this thing, we don't have any sort of engine cover whatsoever, so you get to see all the mechanical components and see exactly what's going on. If you're not a fan of looking at those components, you could always do an aftermarket solution instead. I know some people are like, oh, I want to have this thing covered off. It's a machine. It's a beautiful machine. It's kind of nice to look at everything and see what's going on. We can easily fill up some fluids if we need to. We can easily check our oil, which is always nice. And then we've got easy access to the battery. Now, if you're handy, you want to do some things yourself, you could. We do have slightly easy access to our lights on the front end. On the passenger side, driver's side, definitely should be able to get to those lamps no problem to change them out as necessary. I love the styling of this thing. The first row is extremely comfortable. Looking at the seats, we're in the 400A pack of the vehicle, so driver passenger seat in the first row will be heated, which is definitely a nice thing. So heated minimum. When we look at the 401A package, that's when we get into ventilated front seats as well as heated second row seats. So there is quite a lot of flexibility there. We do have our ST badge right along the back of the seat, and it looks amazing. Like, I love it. It's a small ST highlight there. And even on the steering wheel, we've got a small ST badge right on the bottom of the steering wheel on top of that. Now, a couple things to point out. As I mentioned, we do have our Bang & Olufsen sound system badge along the door there. Because we're in the Edge ST, we do have a 12-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system. Sounds absolutely amazing. I'll give you a quick little audio test in a little bit. But leather-wrapped steering wheel, which is great, and it is a heated steering wheel, which is even better. Now, as I mentioned underneath the hood, this thing is powered by a 2.7-liter turbocharged engine, so the EcoBoost engine, and it does have a 7-speed automatic transmission. One of the cool things is that we also do have our paddle shifters here. So we've got our minus button on the left, plus button on the right-hand side, so we can easily adjust gears as necessary on the fly. And I say on the fly because this is the Edge ST, and it's got so much power. It's amazing. I absolutely love it. Like, if you're a fan of a little bit more power, you're coming from even some higher-end luxury vehicles, and you still love the power, but you want something a little bit more affordable, the Edge ST is kind of that nice option. The 401A specifically, so you can still get those nicer ventilated seats and a few other nice options. But this specific one also has what's known as the Ford Co-Pilot 360 Assist Plus package. Mouthful and a half. Gotta get an acronym for that somehow. But what that gives us is connected navigation, but more importantly, our adaptive cruise control system. So it's our smart cruise. But we're going to go through some of the basics here on the steering wheel, the cluster screen, as well as that Sync 4 media screen. But if you're looking for a more in-depth look, like you want to know how all of these buttons work, how to navigate through the screen, so things like setting up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, or just connecting your phone, check down below because I've put together some crazy comprehensive videos that cover all this stuff off anyways. But going over some of the basics, our stick on the left-hand side, we've got a little button there, and that's going to turn our lane keeping system on or off. So we technically have two different systems. We've got a lane keeping system, and then we've got a lane centering system. Lane centering you can only get with that added Co-Pilot 360 Assist Plus package. But that's going to essentially, the centering system keeps us balanced in our lanes perfectly. If you lose attention for a second, it's not self-driving, but it kind of almost is, because we can use it in conjunction with a few other systems, and it works amazing. Our lane keeping system just gently nudges us back into our lane. We do have the option for our auto high beams there, so later on at night, high beams will flip on. If it senses an oncoming vehicle, it'll start dimming your lights before flicking them back on again. So it's a brilliant system there. Our stick on the right-hand side is going to let us control our front and our rear windshield wipers. As I mentioned, we do have our paddle shifters, and we do have two individual pads, so one on our top left and top right of the steering wheel. And that's going to control each individual cluster screen. So we've got one on the left, one on the right. And you guessed it, pad on the left will control the left. So very straightforward there. We've got a series of different options, as I mentioned, for our adaptive cruise control. A few big ones are that lane centering mode. So it's going to keep you balanced in your lane as more or less self-driving. I kind of can't say it, but I can say it because it keeps you balancing your lane perfectly as long as it recognizes the lane markings. And then we've got a distance indicator, so how close or how far do you want to be away from the vehicle in front of you. The pad on the right-hand side lets us change between songs, radio stations. We can navigate using our voice, using the little voice command prompt. And that button there, so we can use it as a voice command prompt. But if you were hooked up through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, we can do a longer press in order to be able to activate either our Google or our Siri assistant. So it's a nice thing. And this media screen is great, but I'll get to that in a second because I also forgot to mention the steering wheel. So steering wheel itself is going to be telescopic. So in, out, up and down, just in between our legs. We're just going to pull, set to go in order to be able to set it. But the overall steering wheel look is great. As I mentioned, along the very bottom, we've got this gorgeous ST badge, and we've got a nice silver highlight which follows through part of the steering wheel. And then even looking along part of the dash in between all the vents and things like that. And even across the dash, we've got this nice look, and that it's got like a carbon fiber type of a look. So if we look at the actual dash, so just above where the glove box would be, it's like a little carbon fiber look, and that look carries down through the middle here. Get my bottle out of the way for a second, but listen to this. So it does have a nice feel. It's got a great look overall. And as always, if you're not a fan of the general look of any of the aluminums and things like that, you could do an aftermarket wrap. There are tons of options through 3M and some other great companies. So you can literally get more or less like stickers and things like that, but it looks absolutely beautiful what you can do with this thing. Like you can get a faux wood grain look and a number of other things. But let's fire this thing up quick. There we go. We are push button start inside of the Edge ST, which is great. And we have the option of remote starting either through the key fob, so there is a button on the fob for us to be able to do that, or we can use the Ford Pass app in order to remote start that way instead. But you do have the flexibility to be able to use the Ford Pass app in order to be able to do things like set schedules. So if you're the type of person where in the morning, certain days of the week, you go to the gym or you're leaving 7 a.m. in the morning in order to get to work, you can, through the Ford Pass app, have it scheduled to start at the same time every day to precondition your cabin, which is always a nice thing. Now this Sync 4 media screen was brought into the 2021 Edge and it looks absolutely amazing. Like it is literally complete night and day compared to the 2020 model. So I absolutely love the look of it. Like Ford, kudos for what they've done. It is absolutely amazing. But we've got our factory navigation there. We do have the option of hooking up through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, things like that directly through this screen. We've got a beautiful look for not only some basics like the sound settings and our basic display, but for other things like our climate control. The climate control used to be part of the actual center stack there, and now it's built into the screen. Now we do have dual zone climate control, and that's all controlled through the screen. We've got a little plus minus button, we've got a little drag, so we can literally kind of do a drag and drop in order to find our perfect temperature for the driver and for the passenger seat. Moving down a tiny little bit, we've got our volume rocker, we've got a tuning rocker, and it's great because the tuning rocker will be great for Sirius XM, for AM, FM, whatever the case may be. We've got a few other options for audio. If we have our cell phone with a number of different songs on it, if you wanted to listen to Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, whatever the case may be, you can hook up over just through Bluetooth and you can stream that way instead. So you don't need to be hooked up through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. You've got the flexibility to get it if you want to. And that's kind of an interesting one because inside of the Edge ST, we've got the option for a wireless charge pad, but the charge pad is great because this Sync 4 screen also supports wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So we can wirelessly charge while we're wirelessly connected. That is such a great feature and a great option. I love the fact that this thing's got it. But looking along the side there, we do have 2 USB ports. So we've got 2 in the back, we've got 2 in the front here, and then there is a 12-volt power point just to the side. So along our passenger side, we've got like a little storage cubby there, so a little one underneath. And then just next to that, we've got a 12-volt power point. But it is nice overall. Now we've got a series of different buttons in between our volume and tuning rockers. So actually I want to do a quick audio test. Listen to this. Car shaking! So that is the 12-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system. Absolutely amazing. I love the sound inside of this thing. But like I said, we've got our tuning rocker. We can tune through the screen or 97.7.
Tuning to FM 97.7.
So we do have the flexibility to not only tune using our voice, we can navigate. We can set up our voice assistant so that it listens for a wake word. So very similar to your phone, if you were to say, okay, Google or okay, Ford, whatever, you could say okay, Ford. I just gave it away. Okay, Ford and a few other options, which is amazing. We do have a few different options here. Because this one doesn't have the front-facing camera, when we press the little camera button there, it just gives us our backup camera, which is still nice, but it is great that we've got the option for that front-facing camera on top of that. 401A version exclusive. Down from there, we've got a couple of seek buttons, so we can seek between songs, radio stations, whatever the case may be. I already mentioned we've got the option for the wireless charge pad. And then one of the cool things, I love that Ford's done this. So we've got our wireless charge pad where we can literally just drop our phone if we want to, but we've got a little phone storage area. So it's such a nice setup. So if you kind of need to kind of glance at your phone, and you just want to store it a different way, you've got the flexibility to do it just above our cup holders. So our cup holders there, we do have 2 individual ones in the front. Along our driver passenger door, we've got a few bottle holders there. And then we've got our rotary shifter in order to change out gears. So inside of the Edge ST, we've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then our sport mode. I love me my sport mode. Like, absolutely love it. When I take this thing out for a spin, I'm definitely using that sport mode because it's such an amazing feeling and performance when you use it. But moving down from there, we've got an electronic parking brake. We do have a little storage tray in behind that. And then we've got an armrest with a fully removable tray. Fully removable tray, and we've got a boatload of storage space down there, which is definitely a nice thing, and we do not have any other power points. So it literally is just the storage tray by itself, or the storage area by itself, but still nice to know we've got a ton of storage inside of this thing. Now, as we start to move up overhead, right above the media screen, we do have a little rubberized tray that's fully removable, so if things get a little bit messy, we can take that off in order to clean it down. Up overhead from that, the Edge ST will also have an auto-dimming rearview mirror. We've got our basic cabin controls, as well as the option to control our sunshade. So along the right-hand side, that's going to control the actual shade itself. You can hear it going. Here it comes. Oh. All right, so we can one button press in order to be able to open the shade, or to close the shade, open it up, whatever the case may be. The shade itself is opening right now, so we can push to stop part way, or just have it going again. So it's very straightforward. We've got the flexibility of being able to just vent this thing out. So if we wanted to just create a little bit of a cross breeze, we can easily do that. And then we press the back button in order to be able to close it. And then extending it open. So this thing, it's a full panoramic roof and it looks absolutely beautiful. But when it's opened, it opens up this way with a single button press. Secondary button press opens it up a teeny little bit more, and those few extra inches can matter sometimes. All right, so we can close this thing down as well, and down she goes. Button press there, and there we go. So very simple in order to be able to open and close this thing. But one thing to think about, now, if you're a little bit taller kids, or even if you don't like the sunroof, you don't have to get it. You've got the option of using it as a standalone option, or adding it, I should say, as a standalone option inside of the 2022 Edge. So if you're not a fan of the sunroof, you could put through a factory order. It might take you 2-3 months or so to get it, but you can get your exact build. And if you don't want the sunroof, you don't have to get it. So it's definitely a nice thing. But overhead from that, we do have our sunglasses holder, typical Ford styling. We do have our home link along the top, so if you've got a garage door opener at home, easily program it in. This is our visor. All right, perfect. Vanity mirror with lights on both sides. Close that, and this thing extends out, not all the way, but the majority of the way. Like you see there, tiny little bit of extra space, but it at least blocks the majority of the sun that's potentially going to hit our eyes as we go. Click that, boom, and up it goes. Now this one also does have grab handles. We've got 2 grab handles in the front, 2 in the back, so if things get a little bit crazy, you can hang on if you need to. But overall styling is great. I love the door. I love the basic highlights there, like those metallic highlights, how it follows through all different parts of the dash. It looks nice. Like I said, you've got the option for 3M wraps and other things if you're not really a fan of the way that this thing looks, but as a default, I think it does look fairly sharp. In the second row of the Edge, this thing is fairly spacious. I've got the driver's seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall. I've got a good amount of space for my knees, great amount of foot space. Up overhead, I've got about 2.5 maybe inches of headspace, like 2.5 inches. But there's a couple things to take into account there. This specific one has the panoramic sunroof. So if you've got a little bit of a taller family, you've got the option of getting no sunroof from the factory because it's available as an add-on option. So it's a standalone option where we don't need to package anything else together. Up in Canada, we do have the option of getting the sunroof by itself, or we could look at something called the Canadian Touring Package instead. So you've got a few options there. But one of the nice things is that even if you've got the sunroof up overhead, like I said, like I've got about 2.5 roughly inches of headspace overhead here, we do have a lever. So the one that we pull in order to be able to fold the seat forward, we can also extend it back. And when it's extended back, like even more comfortable. So if you need to get some taller people into this second row, you could easily do it just reclining the seats back in order to make it happen. But overall, very similar to the first row. These seats are very comfortable. If you've got child seats, so kid seats, rear facing, front facing, whatever the case may be, we've got our anchors on the back of the seats, we've got our tether systems and things like that. So rear facing, front facing, definitely not going to have a problem inside of this vehicle. Overall styling inside of this is great. Like I love the interior here. And with the Edge ST, I was kind of explaining it when we were in the first row. We've got our leather seats where it's like a leather trim seat. So part of the seat is leather, part of the seat is like a micro cloth. It looks amazing, feels amazing. Inside of the base 400 package of the vehicle, back row seats are not going to be heated whatsoever. But when we get into the 401A version, we have our ventilated front seats, but also heated second row seats. And that's heated on the outboard. So our driver passenger side, middle seat inside of this thing, never going to be heated. Doesn't matter what you do. You can throw money at Ford. This thing is not going to be heated in the middle seat whatsoever. My seat, that seat, not a problem. You will be heated. And those buttons are just going to be right behind the armrest there. And we don't have any buttons there right now because this thing doesn't have the heated seat option. But if we move down, we do have a little storage tray. We've got 2 USB power points, so a USB, USB-C, and then we've got a 150 watt wall outlet. So if we need to plug in some small things, we've got the capability and flexibility to be able to do it. But overall, this thing is nice. So we do have our silver highlights along the door itself. We've got our gorgeous white stitching along the door, follows through the back of the driver passenger seat, and even into these seats. So it does look fairly sharp. Behind the driver passenger seat, we do have pockets on both seats as well, which is always a nice thing. Up overhead, both driver passenger side, we do have some grab handles. We've got our lights, and then we've also got a little cargo hook there. Oh, clothing hook? Clothing hook. Yeah, clothing hook, jacket hook, whatever the case may be. But it is fairly nice, and like I said, like the seat itself is fairly comfortable. It's got a good amount of bounce to it. Headrests are nice. These things are, oh yeah, they're adjustable. They're adjustable. There's just a little button we've got to push just beside the headrest there in order to be able to lift these things up. There we go. So multi-layer adjust, which is definitely great. We've got some cup holders in the back here on top of that, and cup holders here. And then we've got some small bottle holders along the both the driver and the passenger doors for that second row. Very similar to the rest of the Edge lineup, filling at fuel inside of the Edge ST along our driver's side, and it's a capless system. Looking at the minimum manufacturer's recommendation is just regular 87 gas, and that's pretty much the same thing across the majority of the Ford lineup. But there's a caveat to that. The power, the 335 horsepower, 380 pound-feet of torque, that's achieved using a premium fuel. So you technically don't need to use a premium fuel in order to get good performance out of this thing, but if you want the best performance, a 91, 94 would kind of be the best thing, but you don't need to use it. You're still going to get great performance out of this thing, whether you go for just the regular 87 or that higher performance instead. All right, towards the back end of the Edge ST, we do have our LED tail lamps there. We've got our gorgeous Edge badge, which Ford changed around in the 2021 model year. And because this is the ST, we've got the ST badge in the grille, but we've also got one just in the back right-hand side on that passenger side. We do have our wiper right along the very top, and one of the great things, we've got our reverse sensing system that's going to be standard inside of the Edge ST. We've got our dual chrome tip exhaust in this thing. It's just built in very nicely to the bumper. It looks fairly sharp. And then we've got that same kind of plastic along the bottom part of the bumper here that you're going to see on the front end. Now this specific one does have the tow package directly from the factory. I always recommend getting it from the factory instead. Like if you ever think you're going to tow anything, even if it's just a bike rack carrier, getting it from the factory helps with the resale value of this thing. We've got our trailer sway control and a few other things that are going to be great as part of that package. And inside of the Edge ST, we're going to be able to max out at 3,500 pound towing capacity. So this thing can tow quite a little bit if you need to. Next up, taking a peek at the key fob for the vehicle. So very similar to what we saw in the 2021 model as well. Along the top, we've got our unlock and our lock button, remote start, trunk release, horn or panic alarm, and then we've also got our emergency access key. So we've got the key there, and just insert and click it, and you're good to go. Along the back of the fob, we do have our ST badge, which very, very similar to what we're going to see on the back end of the vehicle there. So if you take a look, absolutely gorgeous badge right along the bottom there, but we'll get to that in just a sec. All right, in order to be able to remote start the vehicle, we can do it very simply. All we're going to do is press the lock button once and that circle button twice. So you can see there, remote start is now going. In order to cancel the remote start, we just press that circle button there again once. Remote start is now canceled, and it's that simple to do it. We do have the option of using the key fob to open up the trunk if we wanted to, but we've got a little button right underneath the handle there. We can push that to open it up. But one of the great things about the Edge ST is that, let's say you've got a bag full, a handful of groceries, you've got kids in your arms, golf clubs, bags, whatever the case may be. This thing does have a foot-activated power liftgate. So all we have to do, swipe our foot underneath and take a step back, and up she goes. Let's have a peek at the cargo dimensions. Cargo dimensions for the vehicle are going to be showing up, so nice amount of width, depth, and height. And as you can see there, we are a 60-40 split, so 60 driver, 40 passenger, so we can fold down one side or the other if we needed to. And it actually is very straightforward in order to be able to fold the seats down. So, along either door, all we're going to do, there's a little lever just to the side of the seat. We're just going to pull that, and down the seats go. So literally just a pull in order to make it happen. But we've got a lot more depth in looking at the cargo dimensions there when we have one of those seats folded down. We also do have the flexibility of using a button along the side here in order to fold the seats down. And that's for the left and for the right side, which is definitely a nice thing. So we do have a little button there, and we can literally just press in order to be able to fold down one side or the other. So it's an electronic release, and it's a manual up. So you could electronic release, but you've got to go up in order to be able to pull the seats back up. That's the same way across the entire Edge lineup. For pulling them back up, I should say, that release is only going to be on certain versions of the vehicle. But just to the left-hand side of that, we also do have another 12-volt power point back here. We've got some basic cargo nets there that we can easily install. And then this thing also has the option for a cargo shade. So it's available either from the factory or as a dealer option instead. So if you wanted to, you could easily install it. And it's a slider, and in order to be able to essentially block, I should say, whatever is potentially going to be in the trunk area of the vehicle. Outside of that, certain packages will also give us a cargo net. We've got a tiny little storage tray along this side. And then along the right side, we do just have a little storage area cubby just behind that back light there. Now, another thing to point out, we do also have this tray that's fully removable. So if we needed to get access to a few things, we'll get to that in just a second. But the tray itself, the base tray, is going to be a carpet. We do have the option for a thermoplastic rubber tray instead. So if you're an outdoors person, you don't want to be tracking mud. If you've got your fur baby and you want to make sure that you're not getting fur all over the place, you could get a rubberized tray from the factory or as a dealer installed option instead. But as I mentioned, we do have this tray that is literally fully removable if we need to. We've got a bunch of storage along both the left and the right hand side. We've got a mini spare tire inside of this thing, so it's an 18-inch. And we've also got our spigot along the one side. So if we're ever using a jerry can, we're going to insert this first before we actually use the jerry can. Now, if you ever need to change the tire yourself, you've got the flexibility to do it because the jack is just underneath that mini spare tire. But one of the nice things about being a Ford owner is that we also do have our Ford roadside assistance, which means that if you break down, if something happens, you puncture a tire, whatever the case may be, you can call up roadside assistance. They can change the tire out. They can bring you to your local Ford dealer as well, which is definitely a nice thing. Now, this specific one is the Edge ST, specifically the 400A package. So the 400A package, what that means is it's your entry-level Edge ST. So you've got that 2.7 engine, you've got these gorgeous leather seats, Sync 4 media screen, which is standard. But I guess I would say one of the big differences between the regular Edge ST and then the 401A package of the vehicle instead would be what's going on with the seats. So inside of the 401A package, we're going to have heated and ventilated front seats. At a very minimum, we're at least going to have heated seats. So you can see here, we've got our heated seats, heated steering wheel, whatever the case may be. And that's going to be heated seats for the driver passenger side in the first row. When we get into the 401A package, we're also going to have heated front row seats, heated second row seats, but the driver passenger side for the first row also are ventilated. So that is very, very nice, especially on toasty days like today. And by toasty, I mean cool days like today. That's so ridiculous. Ventilated seats, good for toasty days. Cooled seats, good for hot days. Whatever the case may be. You know what I meant. You know what I meant. Oh man, that's funny. So this is good. This is It's got a nice amount of pickup and go, and like specifically because we're in the 2.7 liter, we do have the flexibility on the little rotary dial in order to change out to our sport mode. Now on top of that, the Edge ST, so the packages that we've got, this thing also does have paddle shifters. So if you're a fan of having that little bit of extra power as you go, you've got the flexibility to easily change out gears as necessary. I'm gonna have to stop here. All right, so let's do a few highlights. Now this specific one also has what's known as the convenience package, which is going to give us a wireless charge pad. So wireless charging is great. So if your phone supports charging, it's just below the media screen. So there's a little kind of cutout there. We've got 2 USB ports, so USB, USB-C, and then that wireless charge pad. But overall, this thing looks nice. Like I still can't get over the Sync 4 media screen. I love what Ford's done with this thing. So one of the cool things is that you've got a ton of flexibility for the screen itself. Wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. We've got factory navigation that is very responsive. We can go for a fuller screen. And then one thing that changed in the previous gen, so the 2021, when Ford introduced this Sync 4 screen, is the climate control. So it used to be tactile buttons versus now it's actually built right into the digital screen. So it looks very, very neat. It's colorful, it's engaging. I love what Ford's done with it. I know some people, it's, the tactile buttons, they love it, they miss it, whatever the case may be. But I felt the same way when I got my first touchscreen phone. Like when the iPhone first came out back in 2007, I was on BlackBerry for the longest time, and that tiny little button. So it was super easy in order to be able to dial, whatever the case may be, because it's a tactile button. And then once the iPhone came out, it was like, what's happening right now? It's a complete change in technology, but it's just the way that technology is going. A lot of manufacturers are going more towards these touch screens. I'm curious with the chip shortages that are happening, if that's going to change anytime soon. I don't think so, because other things are getting pulled off. Like in other versions of vehicles that for the actual climate, it used to have the numbers that would show inside of the dials. A lot of Ford vehicles don't have that anymore because of the chip shortage. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that have changed because of it, but improvements that have made and some streamlines and things like that. So overall though, this thing is nice. It's super comfortable. It's a nice feel overall. Oh, this is good. Now there's obviously a ton of traffic in front of me here, so I don't think there's nobody directly behind me. So I'm gonna hang off a second. I'm gonna drop us into sport mode, and we're gonna open it up and have a little bit of fun. All right, 3, 2, and... Ah! I love it so much. Oh, it's so good. All right, I just turned on the adaptive cruise, so technically I'm going 70, but I've got the cruise set to 100. So as cars start to speed up, this thing is also going to speed up, which is definitely a nice thing. You can adjust the distance for how far you are away from the vehicle in front of you. And then if you change lanes, that's gonna pick you right back up to your set speed again. So this thing should start flying. Here we go. Very straightforward to use all of these different systems, use them in conjunction with one another as well. And then we do have our paddle shifters inside of this thing. So it is inside of the ST, it's a 7-speed automatic transmission. When we look at the 2-liter engine, it's going to be an 8-speed instead. So, I mean, which way you go is gonna be up to you. If you even wanna use the paddle shifters, you don't need to. Unfortunately, no way to disable them. So if you know you're never gonna use them, unfortunately, you can't permanently disable these things. But, okay, foot down. Good amount of power. Like I said, if you need to drop down a gear as well, easily do it. Easily do it. And it's interesting, even looking at so you can see what gear you're in as you go. As of right now, I'm driving and it's in Sport 4 gear. So you can hear it like revving up a little bit higher, and it's just gonna lead to that overall more aggressive performance inside of this thing. And you're gonna get infinitely better performance in the Edge ST than you will in the regular Edge. So if performance is your thing, like you're coming from a more powerful vehicle, you're gonna definitely wanna go for the Edge ST. It is nice, it's really nice. Formula Ford, excellent dealership. They're Ford Lincoln, so if you're looking for either or, you can definitely chat with them. One of the nice things is that these guys are also part of a larger dealer group. So they've got Mitsubishi, there's a Land Rover Jaguar dealership, and a few others. So if you're in the market for any of those vehicles, these guys, amazing to work with. I'll drop the links down below. You can check it in the description for that. You can also check down below for the full build link for this vehicle that I'm driving right now. Oh, all-wheel drive, love it. Bam. Reverse sensing system, oh so nice. But that was a quick look at the 2022 Ford Edge ST. What did you think? I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions though, any comments, drop down below and let me know. I'm super responsive, more than willing to answer any questions that you might be having. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your social networks, and think about subscribing to the channel. Until I see you next time though, take care. So if you're early morning going to the gym or going to work, whatever the case may be, you can schedule the car to start through your phone app, the Ford. So if you're now this specific one does have the tow package from the factory. Hilarious. But one of the nice things is that if you're a Ford owner,